growing up, were you exposed to music at all as a kid, or kind of what was your creative life like at that time?
Yeah, I don't come from a musical family at all. I did play piano when I was younger for about 5 years, but I was always fascinated with music. I listened to a lot of Sade with my mom in the car, just like a lot of different stuff that like not a lot of kids would grow up listening to. And as soon as I started getting gifted CDs and projects, I was opening up the pamphlets and just fascinated by, you know, who produced what and the whole process. And, you know, it didn't really at the time register with me in terms of where that was going to lead, but I would say that kind of like interest and fascination as a child is really where it all started.
Beautiful. Yeah. Was that kind of, so were you in a band or were you in anything to support that?
No, not at all. And that's why it's my journey with music is interesting, right? So played piano when I was younger, but it wasn't something that I wanted to stick with. I actually wanted to be an actor growing up. And I started picking up DJing at 13. So that's where music started becoming a lot more of a consistent presence in my life. I dabbled in the creation of music in high school, you know, tried my hand in rapping. In college, I tried my hand in production for the first time, but it just never really stuck until after college.
Gotcha.
You know?
What did you go to college for?
I just went to San Jose State for a marketing degree, you know. At that time in my life, I was still DJing, but it was always more a hobby rather than a passion. And it wasn't until post-grad that I say this, like I had to lose myself to find myself again. And the thing that brought me home was music. I was connecting with a friend of mine who was producing at the time. He was living in San Francisco. I was still living in San Jose. And I would make that commute 2, 3, 4 times a week. And I would go over to his house and just watch him make beats for hours. And that slowly started transitioning into me doing some collaborative work with him. And it kind of just really snowballed from there.
Wow. So when you talk about how you had to kind of lose yourself to find yourself, I heard through the grapevine that you were part of, or you had some kind of a position that you wound up leaving in order to kind of pursue this. Yeah. If you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Absolutely. So I think the best way to phrase this is that when I was younger, I wasn't really conscious of the duality of life and the duality that lived within me. So I would say within college, I leaned very hard into my extroverted side. And within that, I got very involved on campus. I started my own entertainment business and was positioning myself to climb within a corporate sense, right? I was working out of college, I was juggling the business and then working at Tesla at the time. I had this inflection point where I feel that I had leaned so hard into this extroverted side and this extroverted being that no matter how much success I was experiencing, I still felt very empty. And I couldn't really put my finger on it, you know, it didn't really make sense. I was like, how can I have all of these wins coming my way but not be truly enjoying them, right? And the thing that was always in the back of my mind was like, you never really gave yourself a shot with music. You know, the one thing that always fascinated me, the one thing that I truly loved more than anything else, right? DJing was an exhilarating feeling for me every time I got to do it. You know, even at the time before I was making music, I would spend hours making playlists, you know, organizing my records, like it's things that I truly thought were just hobby, but I didn't recognize that it was passion, and that was the way to feed my introverted side, you know, the side of myself that's contemplative, the side of myself that's creative, that I wasn't really giving it the proper nurturing that it needed.
Wow. So what was the shift then? Like, what was the catalyst that kind of, or if there was an aha moment, it kind of sounds like it kind of piled up over time, maybe? Yep,
definitely that. And you're right, there wasn't necessarily like a super aha moment. It was something that was very much, I had to go through the journey, you know? I had to experience all those things and find all those signs in a way to kind of to accumulate that, to get to the point where I started to build the confidence and believe in myself and being able to even go on the journey to pursue music. But I do remember that there was just one point for me where it was Coachella 2015, which was the last Coachella that I'd been to and like the last major festival that I went to. And I was at that age, a very constant festival goer. Any show, any festival that I could go to, I was there. I was such a fan of music. But I just remember having this inflection point. I'm there in the crowd, I forget who I'm watching, but I just have a moment where like, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be in the crowd. Like, I want to be a part of creating this moment, you know, like looking around, seeing so many people here together from all over the world, encapsulated by this song. Like, yeah, I feel this. I want to be part of creating this. And it was really after that things started to settle in with me, like, this is the path that I want to start following.
That's really profound. That, yeah, there was kind of that poignant moment of like everything kind of aligned. Yeah. It sounds like, and also the fact that you haven't been back to a festival since. Like, it's just, I don't know. You've just been working on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, kind of after that, how did you hear about Icon? How did that come into the equation?
I mean, at the time, I was really, really, really huge fan of electronic music in general. I mean, I still am to an extent. My palette, I think, has developed as I've gotten older, but, you know, at the time, that's when Jaws was really putting on for Icon. I had put together a show while I was still in college, and we booked Sunburn, and, you know, I had a conversation with him. So it was a combination of, like, I had some friends who told me about it. I'd followed Jaws pretty heavily. He was mentioning it, and then that conversation with Sunburn really is what put Icon on the map for me. And then after that, after doing some more research of other music schools and stuff, it just felt like the right fit for what I was trying to do at the time.
Yeah. Wait. So you talked about you were really into electronic music, and then that kind of started to shift. Did that shift? I mean, it sounds like you were just a lover of music ever since you were young. Yeah. But in terms of what you actually were looking to be involved with, did that shift happen kind of while you were at Icon? Did that happen after?
Yeah. I would say that my experience at Icon opened up my perspective. It didn't happen immediately, but my experience going through Icon, again, opened up my perspective to where this shift happened a few years later. But I wouldn't have gotten there without going through Icon, you know? Coming into Icon, man, I really just wanted to be, and I think a lot of kids who come into Icon, they just want to be like the DJ who's killing it, making like really dope electronic shit, like heavy hitting trap, like whatever it is. And I was very much on that lane. You know, I was part of, me and my buddy that I'd actually would go to San Francisco, we were in this DJ duo together, and that was the route that we kind of wanted to go. After going to Icon and just actually learning about music, right? I had never learned the language of music. I'd always just been a fan. It started to really open up my palette and open up my perspective more. And I found myself listening to a much more robust catalog of music than I'd ever had before. So I graduated Icon 2016. I didn't really start this journey of like being a solo producer until 2019. So it did take some years after that too, of like trying to go down that path of trying to be in the DJ duo and do like kind of the electronic route, to start to find my lane more as a producer.
Gotcha. So while you were at Icon, were there any particular challenges that you found that you faced throughout your time there, or was it just kind of keep your head down and just work and learn the technical skills? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I came in, I didn't know how to make music when I went to Icon. Like, I had a very, very bare base level knowledge. I knew it sounded good, but like from a technical perspective, I was as green as it could get, right? So there were clearly the challenges that go along with that, but you know, on top of that too, I had to pay for Icon myself, so it was the struggle of juggling a full-time job, while making sure to create time for learning, while also making sure to create time for actually applying the things that you learn. So I'd say that the balancing act was probably like the most difficult part of my time there.
Was it tough to sacrifice so much to kind of be able to make that happen? Or
Yeah,
okay.
And I didn't really understand the level of sacrifice that it would take at the time. That experience is what planted the seed of learning what true sacrifice really looked like. But I'm grateful for it because now, 6 years later, it comes like second nature to me. You know, I really understand what it takes, what type of work you need to put in to get to the place that you want to be. So learning to say no started with my experience at Icon. I feel like I'm a pro at it now. You know, I can say no to things that I don't want to do very easily. It's just like, it's really hard to get me out of the studio at this point. I really only take the breaks when I know that my body and my spirit is calling for it. And I mean, I'd say that's actually even a season that I'm in right now. Just finished up a project that just came out. I like to usually take like a week or two break after a body of work that I've been a part of comes out, just to kind of soak everything in and recharge and come back with a fresh perspective. But I wouldn't have really learned the concept of boundaries and sacrifice if it weren't for that experience of going to school, juggling full-time job. Also being in that inflection point when you start, like you have to put so much time in, you know, like it's really, especially when you feel like you're so far behind, every hour is so valuable. You know, for someone like myself, I was 23 when I came to Icon. A lot of kids are younger than me at the time. They're, you know, 18, 19. So I already felt like I was behind. So any day that I missed, I felt like, oh man, I'm just slipping even more, right? So yeah, I really started to learn, and that was the difficult time for me because I was still such a huge fan of music. That's when I was still wanting to go to festivals. I still wanted to go to shows, and I had to learn how to say no to a lot of things. And man, like, you lose friends in the process. I'm not even gonna front. Like, it's something you kind of have to come to grips with. Like, the real ones will stay with you, but like, you say no to enough shit, people are gonna stop hitting you up, you know? So you have to really be aligned in understanding like what you want and what it takes to get there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like just saying no, it's actually respectful oftentimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're aligning yourself with what you really need, and you know, in turn, people are showing up for, you know, what they need ideally. And so once you finished up, you said that there was about a 3-year gap between the 2016 graduation date and 2019, which is when, did you say that that was kind of when things really kicked off?
During that 3-year window is when I was really trying to lean into being part of this electronic DJ duo, right? Through that experience, met a ton of different artists that we started collaborating with, from singers to rappers to other producers. And through that experience, it started to kind of shift my perspective on what I wanted to do. I didn't realize it at the moment, but I would say it really just felt like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, right? Like, a lot of the people that we were collaborating with and then the type of music that we were making, it wasn't really aligning, but I found myself really enjoying when I would drop the idea of like, this needs to be for this project, and just creating and seeing what came out of that. So through that experience, I ended up meeting City James, who's one of my closest friends, but also one of the main artists that I work with. We met at the end of 2016, and we started making music together, but I got my first lockout studio in North Hollywood in 2019, and that moment is when things really started to elevate, because before I was just a bedroom producer at that juncture. And it's really a different dichotomy when you're working with somebody, when you're just like, hey, come over to my house and hang out in my room and let's like make stuff, versus like, come to my studio, I have a space. I think that there's something to be said about creating space in general when it comes to a creative process. In 2019 was the year that we really started to catch our stride as like a producer artist. Collaborative energy, and I mean, at this juncture, I executive produce all his stuff. I produce most of his stuff. I engineer his stuff. I mix his stuff. That experience, though, of building with him is what started to open my eyes of like, okay, this is really the route that I want to go down. This is the route that I feel most called to do, because I've always had, first and foremost, I've always had a very eclectic taste in music. the thing that I was struggling in when I was trying to make it work as, you know, an electronic producer was that I felt pigeonholed in what I could create. Being a producer that helps artists unlock their biggest potential now removes limitations of what I can make and what I can be a part of from a creative process. You know, at this juncture now, I work with rappers, I work with singers, I work with people in all different genres of music, which is one of the most fulfilling feelings that I have. So that experience with him, and then really in 2020, once the pandemic hit, we just pretty much didn't leave the studio. He and I just locked in and just created and really started to craft his sound and build his sound. And that's when I really fell in love with music to the depth that I do now. And that's when all the lessons that I was telling you about, that the seeds were planted at Icon, started to really resonate. Because it's a lot easier to say no when there's nothing to say no to, right? And you start to really be able to dive into something that you really love and realize and explore the depths of that love, to where now, like post-pandemic, coming out of it, it's like, no, I understand what I want to do and I understand what I love doing. So it's very easy to say no to certain things. But yeah, so that's kind of what that 3-year journey was. It was a lot of failing. It's a lot of experimenting. It's a lot of, you know, allowing yourself to grow, and a lot of ego death in the process too, right? Like I had to shed this expectation of what I was going to become as an artist, who I wanted to be as an artist. And it was a difficult process, right? It was really a difficult process. You have to, you know, I was in a duo with somebody else, you know, that has to come to an end. You know, I had these expectations of timelines of, you know, I remember one of my goals, you know, at Icon, they ask you, you know, when you're interviewing your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals. And like, one of my goals is like, in 5 years, I want to be, you know, DJing a stage at Coachella. Like, you know, that to get rid of those timelines and to shed all the expectations that you have when you first embark on a journey, and allow the journey itself to be the thing that unfolds and shows you your path, was one of the most difficult things that I had to navigate, but it brought me to where I am now, which is, you know, one of the best places that I've ever been, personally as a human being, but, you know, as a musician as well.
Wow, I mean, that was all like very profound, I feel like, but it makes so much sense. It feels profound, yet it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's just, it sounds like you're very disciplined. Am I wrong in saying that? Is that something that you've always?
I work on it for sure.
Okay.
I think that, you know, all of us, you know, I think some people would say I'm disciplined. I'd say that I have room for growth and room for improvement. We're our own worst critics, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, it's just really about having an understanding of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And for me, it's also, I just really love doing this, you know? And that's the simplicity that I didn't really understand when I was younger and when I first started this journey. It's all one thing. This entire journey is all one thing, right? It's not just about the music for me anymore at this juncture. It's just about life, you know? It's about my development as a person. It's about my experiences. It's about, and music is just my vessel of how I can express that. And once I started to see that too, like, it's crazy, the music started getting simpler too. I went from trying to apply all this knowledge that I gained at Icon of all these different tricks and all these different layers that I could add to, like, now when I'm in the studio, it's my tracks, it'd be rare for me to have like over 10 tracks in a song when I'm working with an artist, because I love to build from scratch with an artist. It's understanding how to keep things simple so you can let an idea breathe and grow, and then adding subtle complexities to it later if it so calls for it, but also being able to just step away from a song and be like, this is done, you know? Which was something that I also really struggled doing in finding that simplicity, you know? And it just kind of made me realize that all of my biggest influences in the music that I listen to the most and I love the most is some of the simplest shit that you'll ever hear.
It's true.
But the complexity lies in the simplicity, in the sense of like being able to get to that point, to understand the depth of each piece, to understand that each element plays a certain role and how important of a role that it plays in. And once I started to apply that to my own life too, you start to shed the unnecessary elements, right? So for me, that was going out all the time. That was, I'm sober now, so it was my vices, drinking, smoking, and creating space for the things that mattered to you the most.
Beautiful. I mean, I think it's just a message that I think people really need to hear that and to understand that fully, because it's so much unlearning, So, no, it's really beautiful to hear. So, in terms of kind of that ego death and moving towards working with other artists and whatnot, how is that kind of coming out in your life now? Like, what has evolved from all of that?
I think the moment that I removed my desire from being at the forefront and put the art first is when I learned that for me, art is collaboration. And that's kind of the essence of how all of us here at Basewood move. It's very community driven. It's been a very interesting zoom out for me because I felt like everything was just so, I was thinking on such a micro level, like everything is like, this is what's right in front of me, and being able to zoom out has allowed me to collaborate with a variety of different artists. Artists that I'm fans of, like City James is an artist that I was a fan of before we started working with. Duckworth is an artist that I was a huge fan of before I started working with. I just released a project with this artist named Radamiz, somebody who I wasn't too in tune with his stuff, but I'd heard some of it and was a huge fan. And, now I just executive produced one of his projects that dropped today. Rihanna J, she's an R&B singer, extremely talented. I've executive produced her entire project that's going to be coming out. Getting in the room with artists that I'm just genuinely fans of is really the juncture that I'm at now. And it's a really, really fulfilling place to be at because, I was hitting this point where I was trying to take on projects like production projects or mixing projects to make some money or whatever it was. And it was starting to really taint the creative process for me. So I made a promise to myself around like this time last year that I wasn't going to engage in any projects that I wasn't a fan of, that I didn't truly believe in. And since I've done that, it's completely changed the type of blessings that have been coming my way, the type of opportunities that have been coming my way, and the doors that have opened as well.
I mean, it's right back to that saying no, and then it's just amazing things that you can open yourself up to once you're clear on what fulfills you and your artistry. And so you mentioned Basewood. For those who don't know, what is Basewood? Yeah,
so I think that the simplest description is Basewood is a creative collective. Focusing right now primarily in video production and music production and talent management. So on the video production side of things, we have an extremely talented director duo by the name of Made by James, which consists of, I've mentioned his name a bunch of times already, but City James, and then another very talented director in Darren James. And we have a full team behind that, a team of producers, a team of video editors, the whole nine. And we've done videos for artists like Isaiah Rashad, Big Sean, Snoop Dogg, Blast, just really a whole roster of really talented and amazing artists. So that's one leg of what we do. And then on the music production and talent management side as well, that's really more my domain. We have myself, we have City James, we have Rihanna J, and we have the studio in the back of the space. So it's really just a community of, in my opinion, some of the most talented creatives that I've ever been around who decided to get together and bring their talents under one roof. And there's a lot of like seamless work that goes on, right? Because we have our own artists as well, it's like, okay, well, let's shoot a video for it. Let's create some content for it. Vice versa. I've had opportunities to score some work for Adidas and Reebok because we had video projects for them and we needed music and we have it in house. I would say it's just it's an up and coming creative collective and creative hub. Amazing.
I mean, just walking into the space, it's so beautiful, and it feels like just such a great place to breed creativity and, you know, for everything to come together. So for anyone who would be potentially interested in starting something along those lines, do you have any advice for someone like that?
Yeah. This is always a tough one to answer because I feel like the advice that I'm about to give, it sounds like it sounds so simple, but it's difficult to apply and practice. But I wouldn't have gotten here if it weren't for trusting the process and trusting the journey. When I was a part of Icon, you know, it was always one of my goals to start a creative collective. I had no idea how I was going to do it or how it was going to come about, what those actionable steps look like. And I don't even think that particularly the steps that I took are a blueprint for everyone because every journey is going to look different. But I would say be someone that people genuinely want to work with and see where that takes you and see where that develops. I have no knowledge of video production, right? But I do have expertise on a business front. You know, City James has no knowledge on the production music side of things, and has a great breadth of knowledge on the video front. I needed some help, you know, on the business side, so we brought in somebody else who could help us out on that front as well. It's about building genuine relationships with people that you can really trust to build with, and then role clarity, understanding what everybody brings to the table. And not trying to do too much or not trying to get over your head and allowing everybody to play their part. And again, collaborate. That's really, I think that if I could give a theme to anything of this entire talk that we're having right now is just the power of collaboration and the power of really trusting the process along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, especially, yeah, having that creative trust in people, that's just ultimately, we're so much stronger together than we are on our own.
Absolutely.
So what do you see as the future for yourself personally and then also as Basewood? Yeah,
I mean, on a personal level, I think I have a lot of tangible goals, I would say, that sit in the back of my mind, but I've learned to not get too attached to those in throughout this process. So really, I just want to be in a position that I am where I can continue to grow, continue to create with people that I'm genuinely a fan of, and be part of timeless bodies of work. That's really where I feel like my calling is to help artists unlock their deepest potential, and continue to be a part in creating timeless bodies of work. And then, you know, on the Basewood level, I mean, really this is year one for us and we've already been able to accomplish so much. I really think the sky is truly the limit for us, in terms of, you know, who we're going to be able to collaborate with next, what videos are going to be created next, what artists are going to come in here and create. You know, I think that moving forward, we're going to be positioned as one of the most impactful creative collectives in the music industry and just in the creative industry realm in general.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys, you hold a lot of power and potential, and it sounds like you're running the course. Like, it's not trying to put the cart before the horse or anything. Just
exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. How do you feel like kind of living in LA and everything has informed your personal journey, but then also just starting a collective here? Yeah,
so coming from the Bay, where there isn't really such a prevalent music scene, coming to LA was incredibly refreshing from that standpoint of being able to be around a lot of like-minded creatives and individuals who are working towards a common goal. And I'm very blessed and grateful to be in a position where I've been able to find my tribe and my community here to build with, right? Because the city can be incredibly unforgiving if you don't have that. As an individual, you can create from anywhere. You don't need to be in a city, but if you want to create something larger than yourself and bigger than yourself, it's going to take a community to do that. Moving to a city like LA, finding the people that align with you and your vision and people that you can really trust, I think it's a critical part in actually building something sustainable and something that'll last and have a larger impact than just what one person can do.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's been, coming, at least personally, just living in Los Angeles. I mean, it's just amazing the resources that are just available, and I think not being afraid to reach out to people and just, like you're saying, collaborate. That's ultimately, I believe how we grow and expand what we're capable of. So, final question for you. What advice would you have for someone who is looking to pursue a career or a creative path?
Yeah, be cool with the process. Have a clear vision of why you're doing it. I think we get wrapped up in the what a lot, what we want it to look like, how we want it to look. But if you focus on why you're doing something and you open yourself to all the possibilities that come from that, you'll 90% of the time end up in a position that you didn't think you were going to be in. And that's really where trusting the process kicks in. So I would say really have a deep understanding and a deep connection with your why, and trust everything that comes along with that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Of course, thank you. Appreciate you guys.